Careful, he might drool in your pancakes. That's what one of the boys at the next Beth snorted when I tried to lift my coffee with my left hand. The only one I had left. I didn't respond. Just kept eating slowly. My leg brace creaked every time I shifted. They laughed again, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Then the door opened. The man in uniform stepped in, a Marine colonel. He looked at me, closed his notebook, and walked straight toward our table. If you believe true hair doesn't need to shout comment respect below. It was just another quiet Thursday morning at Maryland's diner. The kind that blends into hundreds before it. In the small rhythm of my post-military life, I always sat in the back corner. Same table, same waitress, same coffee. Order placed before I even settled into the vinyl booth. 2 eggs over easy wheat toast. Black coffee, strong enough to stand a spoon in. It was a routine as structured as the physical therapy exercises I still performed each morning 20 years after the IED that took half my right leg and my entire right arm. They knew me there, not by name, not by rank, just as Mr. Robert, the quiet guy with the brace and the beat-up camo jacket that had seen better days. Most mornings the regulars nodded respectfully or left me to my silence. Marilyn, the owner, sometimes sat with me during lulls, not expecting conversation but offering company. She'd lost a brother in Desert Storm. I lost most of myself back in Fallujah, never complained about it, never saw the point. Life goes on even when pieces of you don't make the journey home. That particular morning, I noticed a group of young men I hadn't seen before. Contractors maybe, or warehouse workers from the industrial park outside town. 5 of them, loud, fresh-faced, full of themselves and the immortality of youth. Their table was littered with coffee mugs, syrup-soaked plates, and the casual disregard of those who'd never had to clean up after themselves. They stared when I limped in, metal brace tapping against the tile floor like a metronome, counting off seconds of discomfort. I ignored it. You get used to stares after a while. They become like background noise, present, but not worth acknowledging. I sat down, carefully adjusting the prosthetic arm before reaching for the menu. I didn't need Anna. My usual waitress brought coffee without being asked. Morning, Mr. Robert. The usual, I nodded, offering a small smile that felt like more effort than it was worth. The first insult came when I dropped my napkin, the prosthetic hand not quite managing the delicate grip. As I awkwardly leaned to retrieve it, a voice carried from the next booth. Hey old man, you need a leash for that thing. Laughter followed, the cruel, empty kind that speaks more about its source than its target. I gave them a polite smile, didn't answer. There was a time when I might have responded differently, when I commanded 300 men and my word carried the weight of life and death. But that was another lifetime ago. Anna shot them a withering look as she delivered my eggs. Show some respect, she hissed. I waved her off gently. It's all right, no need for drama. It's not all right, she whispered, but moved on to other tables. I dealt with worse in deserts, in jungles, in hospitals, where doctors spoke about me as if I wasn't there. Mockery was just noise, and I'd learned to filter noise decades ago. But they kept going through their meal, snickering, whispering loudly enough to be heard. One even took out his phone to snap a picture of my prosthetic hand when I reached for the syrup, as if my disability was some kind of sideshow attraction. The other diners glanced over occasionally, some with sympathy, others with discomfort, none with intervention. It's the way of the world now, observation without action. I said nothing. That silence, it was the only defense I had left, until the bell over the door chimed and the atmosphere in the entire diner shifted like air before a thunderstorm. The man who entered wore a crisp Marine service uniform, not dress blues for show, but the real working uniform of an active duty officer, desert tan, with subdued insignia, a uniform that had seen use beyond parade grounds and photo opportunities. Silver Eagle insignia on his collar caught the fluorescent light, the rank of colonel earned through decades of service. Combat ribbons in orderly rows told stories of deployments, conflicts, and accomplishments that most civilians would never fully comprehend. Service stripes on his sleeve long enough to shame a flagpole. He stood just inside the doorway for a moment, surveying the room with the practiced assessment of someone who automatically noted exits, occupants, and potential threats. He held a leather-bound notebook in his left hand, his posture perfect without seeming forced. The group of young men at the next table quieted slightly, unsure whether to continue their mockery or mind their manners in the presence of obvious authority. One nudged another, whispered something that produced nervous laughter. The colonel's eyes continued their scan until they found me in my corner booth. They held for a moment, sharp, knowing, assessing. Something passed between us in that brief exchange. Unspoken recognition born of shared experiences most people would never understand. Then he closed his notebook with a deliberate snap, tucked it under his arm, and walked slowly past the counter. His boots made no sound on the linoleum floor. the practiced step of a man who had learned that noise can kill. He stopped directly beside my table, standing at perfect parade rest. "Good morning, sir," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet diner. Then in one fluid motion, he snapped to attention and saluted me. A perfect regulation salute offered with the precision that only comes from years of practice in genuine respect. The diner fell completely silent. Forks paused midway to mouths. Conversations died mid-sentence. Anna froze by the coffee machine pot still tilted over a mug. The young men at the next table turned various shades of pale. One of them dropped his fork with a clatter that seemed to echo in the silence. "Permission to sit?" Sergeant Major, the colonel asked, still at attention. I nodded, barely, the memories and habits of another lifetime stirring in muscles that remembered what it meant to command respect rather than endure pity. He sat across from me without waiting for the approval of anyone else in the room, his movements crisp and deliberate. "Sir, it's an honor to meet you," he said, his tone conveying genuine respect rather than patronizing sympathy. "Your record is still used in officer candidate briefings at Quantico, Fallujah, the convoy rescue." I recognized the brace design in the silence. I don't remember saying much in response. Maybe I smiled. Maybe I teared up a little. 20 years of suppressed pride and buried identity rising to the surface so suddenly can overwhelm even the most disciplined mind. He continued just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I've studied your tactics. 3 tours in Afghanistan, and I carried your field manual with me every time. The men you saved in that ambush. One of them was my uncle." The young men who had been mocking me were now staring openly, comprehension slowly dawning on their faces as they realized they had been ridiculing someone whose actions had shaped history they'd never bothered to learn. The colonel turned in his seat, looked directly at them, and said one simple sentence: "You owe this man more than you could ever repay." His voice wasn't raised. There was no anger, no aggression, just a simple statement of fact delivered with the quiet authority of absolute certainty. Then he pulled out his wallet, placed enough cash on the table to cover not just my breakfast, but theirs as well. "Your meal is taken care of," and he told them as he stood. "Consider it a small lesson in recognition. You'll learn what that means someday, or you won't. But he'll still be the hero either way." The entire diner stared at the tableau. The disabled veteran, the Marine colonel standing beside him, the shamed young men who suddenly couldn't meet anyone's eyes. And for once those boys had nothing to say. No clever remarks, no snickering. Just the uncomfortable silence of those confronting their own smallness for the first time. If you believe respect should come before regret, hit that subscribe button for more powerful moments from Steelheart Stories. After that morning, I noticed things change at Marilyn's diner. The group of young men never returned, or maybe they did, quieter, humbled, unrecognizable without their loud bravado as a marker. Either way, their booth remained occupied by others who now glanced at my corner with curious respect rather than dismissive pity. But the changes went beyond their absence. Strangers began to greet me when I entered, small nods of acknowledgement that required no conversation but conveyed genuine recognition. Occasionally I'd find my bill already paid, the responsible party long gone before I could object or thank them. Veterans, some I'd never seen before, would touch their foreheads slightly when our eyes met. Not quite a salute, but the civilian echo of one, a brotherhood acknowledged without fanfare. Word had spread, as it always does in small towns. Not my full story that remained largely classified and fragmented across redacted reports, but enough for people to reassess the quiet man with the prosthetics who'd been in their midst all along. Marilyn, the owner, placed a small brass plaque at my usual booth. 1 week later, simple, understated but unmistakable, reserved for SGM Robert Keane, United States Army Retech. She asked me if it was okay when she showed it to me. I said no, it was unnecessary. Inappropriate, too much attention for a man who'd spent decades avoiding exactly that. She smiled, the kind that reaches the eyes, and replied, "Then it's even more necessary." The plaque stayed. I considered finding another diner, another routine, another corner where anonymity might still be possible, but there was something about the simple recognition that felt like coming home after a long deployment, uncomfortable in its unfamiliarity, yet right in some fundamental way. The Marine colonel, whose name I learned was James Ellis, returned the next month, this time with 3 young officers in training, cadets learning the weight of the uniform they would soon wear fully. He brought them to my table, introduced them with formal courtesy, then told them something I'll never forget. "This man," he said, pointing to me with respect rather than spectacle, "is what grace looks like under fire, not just in combat but in life. Remember his example when the world tests your character in ways you never trained for." I didn't say anything then either, just nodded, uncomfortable with the attention, but understanding its purpose wasn't really about me at all. It was about the next generation, about lessons that can't be taught through manuals and drills. They didn't stay long. Military efficiency doesn't allow for social indulgence, but before they left, each cadet shook my hand, my left one with perfect composure, neither overcompensating for my disability, nor pretending not to notice it. As they departed, I realized something had shifted inside me as well. The chips on my shoulder carried for decades, like additional ammunition, had begun to lighten their load. They didn't remember me for medals locked in a drawer at home. They didn't honor me for classified missions whose details would never see daylight. They remembered me for silence and what it stood for, the dignity that outlasts trauma, the strength that requires no validation, the service that continues long after the uniform is folded away. I still eat at Maryland's every Thursday morning, still sit at the same corner booth, same creaky brace, same cup of coffee that Anna refreshes without being asked. The rhythm of routine remains my anchor in a world that spins too quickly for those who've seen how fragile it truly is. But now there's a folded flag in the window behind my seat. Maryland placed it there after speaking with Colonel Ellis. American flag triangle folded with military precision displayed in a simple wooden case. No name on it, no dates, no explanation, just a symbol and the shadow of stories behind it. New customers sometimes ask Marilyn or Anna, "Who's the quiet guy in the corner?" The question inevitable when curiosity encounters ritual. Marilyn just smiles and says, "He's the reason we stand when the anthem plays." She never elaborates, never tells them about Fallujah, or the convoy, or the 3 weeks I spent dragging wounded comrades through hostile territory with one functioning arm and a makeshift tourniquet around my own leg. Some stories aren't meant for casual consumption over eggs and coffee. Occasionally someone recognizes me, usually military current or former. They approach with respectful caution, introduce themselves, sometimes mention mutual acquaintances or shared battlegrounds. I listen, nod, sometimes even engage in brief conversation if the day's pain levels permit. More often, they simply acknowledge my presence with the subtle signals that veterans share, then continue with their meal, respecting the silence I've wrapped around myself. Like armor, Colonel Ellis stops by whenever he's in town, usually every few months. He never brings attention, never makes a scene, just coffee conversation, measured in quality rather than quantity, and the unspoken understanding of those who've seen humanity at both its worst and its finest hours. I don't need their words or their recognition, but I feel their respect, not the hollow sympathy offered to the visibly broken, not the manufactured gratitude of patriotic holidays and political speeches. Real respect, earned through actions, not claimed through entitlement, given freely rather than coerced through guilt or obligation, not because I demanded it but because someone once stood up and reminded the world how much it mattered, how easily the quiet heroes among us go unnoticed until someone with the right voice speaks their value aloud. That's the true power of recognition, not the momentary comfort it brings to the recognized, but the permanent change it creates in those who learn to see differently. Subscribe to Steelheart Stories if you believe silent scars in service deserve more than passing glances.